Hello Guppies, Virixiss here. In my video about lawbreakers, and in a few videos about depth, I've alluded to bad or absent tutorials. However, I've never really sat down to explain what makes a good tutorial, or at least what I see in one. So today, we'll take a brief look into what a good tutorial looks like, and how to spot a bad one. First things first, your tutorial shouldn't feel like a tutorial if you can avoid it. Let's take Portal for example. In the 19 test chambers in that game, almost half of these can be considered as tutorials for the following tests, and yet they just feel like a standard part of the game. With the exceptions of the tiny sidebars, your actions aren't being blatantly directed. You are free to explore the controls and world until you are ready to move on. And when you do move on, the game rewards you with progress in story development, which is something that most players don't equate with in a tutorial. Making your tutorial feel unobtrusive and working it into the main flow of your game is paramount, or players are far more likely to gloss over it. Next, your tutorial should ensure that your players have grasped the concepts you are attempting to show them before you can move on to the next thing. Weapons and gadgets in the Legend of Zelda games are a great example of this. In each dungeon, you are usually given a new weapon or gadget. In that dungeon, that gadget becomes key to unlocking the path to the boss and moving on with your quest. When you find the slingshot in Ocarina of Time, you can't progress into the dungeon until you use it on a particular switch. In a similar vein, Dodongo's Cavern introduces bombs and their mechanics, and Lord Jabu Jabu forces you to learn the boomerang. In each of these dungeons, you learn how each item works and how to tell when the game is asking you to use an item. By the time you finish a dungeon, you are a master at using your new items and can take those skills further into your venture without needing an annoying reminder. Moving on, your tutorial is the first opportunity to grab your player by the eyeballs and engross them into your game. It's a commonly spouted example, but it is the best one in this regard. The introductory level of God of War. You are fighting from ship to ship, participating in a pure, gory battle before standing toe-to-toe with a ginormous Hydra and impaling it with a ship mast. It's a tutorial level that tells you, buckle up, Buttercup, because it only gets better from here. Not only does it provide an excellent environment for your players to learn, but it serves as a way to engage and keep your audience inside your game. Now, don't believe that your tutorial needs to be jammed completely into the beginning of your game. Sure, you want the majority of it to be in front and center, but if there's going to be some advanced technique that you want to introduce, but you need to make sure that the player is adept at a more basic technique, put off introducing the advanced stuff until a bit later in the game. Make your first few levels pretty basic before slowly introducing your new technique in an eased up way. Once your player has surpassed a few easy challenges with the new technique, feel free to ratchet up the difficulty, or to introduce paths that use that technique. Lastly, be sure to put in some basic control tutorials like WASD movement, space to jump, weapon switching, power usage, etc. This is for two reasons. First, some people might not be used to these things. I know it seems weird, especially for those of us who place their left hand on WASD when they're not doing anything with it, but some people just don't know. They haven't played games enough to develop these conventions. Second, some control schemes that you think are completely normal are completely alien to a lot of your players. Case in point, the infamous Control versus C for crouching. If you didn't have that stated somewhere in your tutorial, you'll confuse the hell out of someone, I guarantee it. Now, before we go, I want to point out a few things to avoid in tutorials. Video tutorials are okay, but if they are the only thing you have to teach players about core systems of your game, you are completely failing your audience. In a similar vein, giant walls of text are a complete and total turnoff. And this thing right here is not a substitute for a tutorial. This abomination should be a screen in the option menu at best, or left out of your game completely at worst. And it should never be leaned on to teach your players anything. Hopefully, this clears the air of what I consider to be a good tutorial experience. Tutorials are simultaneously one of the most important things in a game and one of the most neglected. This is because a good tutorial is being designed in tandem with the game as it is being developed. Thinking of what you need to teach your player ahead of time and designing learning opportunities into the flow of your game can be really difficult. So this is a problem that I can't fault developers too much for nowadays. With some luck, this will give you the ability to tell a good learning experience from a bad one, or at the very least, a ham-fisted one. This has been Virixiss, and I'll see you guppies next time. Bye-bye.